guys? We're back after an action-packed Week 13 for our Thursday night football preview between the Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings. My Pittsburgh Steelers, off a huge win against the Baltimore Ravens, look to carry that momentum into a huge game for the future of their season. If they win, they have a good shot at trying to go ahead and make the playoffs, and if they lose, probably on the outside looking in. You could say the same exact thing for the Vikings at a 4-7 record. If they win, are right in the thick of things with a relatively weak NFC, and at the same time, if they lose, we'll be on the outside looking in. So both franchises will be at full tilt for this game. All eyes will be on Thursday Night Football. And overall, I expect an absolute banger of a game as well. Vegas currently has it as a relatively low-scoring game, currently at a 44-point over-under, with the Vikings slightly favored. But in my opinion, I definitely think it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. On the Steelers side of things, we have a team that's been one of the worst teams all year, whether it's against the pass or the run. And the Vikings, even though they've been a relatively efficient offense, on the defensive side of things, they have a ton to worry about. Some good skill position players on defense, but overall, they let up a ton of yardage and a ton of fantasy production as a result. So I'm a little bit higher on this game from a fantasy perspective than the industry is, and it's definitely going to lead us into some interesting builds for tonight. So with that being said, let's hop right into it with our DFS projections for Thursday Night Football. And here we go. On the screen, you guys can see our projections. Of course, if you want access to these at any time, make sure to check out my Patreon page. We have a ton of injury news that has not come through yet, including Dalvin Cook. I expect him to be questionable for Thursday, a true game time decision. That is obviously going to have a huge effect on this slate, as well as the Adam Thielen injury. Chase Claypool and Ben Roethlisberger, I think that was more of a ceremonial rest there on Monday. I do expect both of them to be all right. But with Thielen and Cook, both of them, their status is well up in the air. I do have Cook projected as out right now and Thielen in, but that could change at any point. So if you want to get access to the projections after all of that news drops, make sure to join the Patreon to get all of the latest news. But with that being said, with the type of game script that we expect here, I do expect this to be an interesting type of build. First and foremost, the Steelers are significantly less expensive than their counterparts on the Vikings, whether it's at quarterback, running back, or especially at wide receiver. There is a glaring difference between the two cores, and in reality, even Vegas has this as a close game. So not necessarily sure I agree with the pricing algorithm there. It's going to build in a lot of inherent value with some of these Steelers players. Also, if we take a look at some of the just one-on-one differences, first and foremost, Chase Claypool at $7,400 versus Adam Thielen at $8,600. To me, Claypool's definitely the value side there. Or even with Deontay Johnson versus Justin Jefferson. I mean, Deontay Johnson's significantly less expensive than Jefferson, and Johnson gets a lot more targets than Jefferson. So if we're expecting this to be a relatively low-scoring game, I'd rather go to some of those cheaper options. They're also giving you higher point per dollar upside. With that being said, let's start at quarterback, though. Let's go the whole way through the position pool here. Kirk Cousins and Ben Roethlisberger are both great options for this slate, especially since I think the total is going to be a little bit closer to 50 or even 55 than the Vegas implied total of 44. So for me, like going to both options, whether it's at captain or the flex spot, I would prefer to use them at captain in onslaught type lineups where I'm taking 4 or 5 players from one team. I'm trying to really stack them up. On their own, as kind of isolated captains, I don't really like it. In a competitive game, I do expect the optimal captain to be one of the skill position type of players. The only real scenario where I see a Ben Roethlisberger or a Kirk Cousins ending up as the optimal captain lineup is if they end up winning like 35-14 or something like that. So for me, I would side towards Ben Roethlisberger just because of the price decrease, but both options are definitely adequate for this slate. Next up at running back, I do have Dalvin Cook projected as out. He was relatively expensive. Obviously, if he ends up getting rolled in, he's going to be in play. But for me, just a little bit of doubt behind the injury makes me a little bit skeptical there. He's expensive. Even if he plays, you might only see like a 65-70% share of the snaps at running back, and that might not be enough to pay off that price tag. So even though the Steelers are absolutely atrocious against the run, for fantasy purposes, kind of hope that Cook is out. That way that Madison is getting most, if not all, of the targets at running back. It would make him instantly one of the best plays on the slate. You can see with Cook out, I have him projected not only in the flex position, but also as one of my favorite captains. He projects for 1.7x value, which is great in this type of price range. Najee Harris, on the other hand, he's a little bit expensive. He's definitely going to be a key part of the Steelers offense. He's going to be in my player pool, both at captain and flex. Pretty similar story to Alexander Madison. Obviously, if Cook plays, not only does that hurt Madison, but I think that Najee Harris becomes by far the best play at running back. You're looking at about 1.7x value on Harris, whereas on Cook, you're probably looking at about 0.8x. He's not going to project very well at just 65-70% of the snaps, and a similar number for Madison. So for fantasy purposes, let's hope that Cook is out, because that would concentrate a lot of the touches on one or two players at the position, and make them a lot more lucrative from a fantasy perspective. Some of the lower tier options I'm not really interested in going to. Kenny Ngawu did see some touches with Cook out of the lineup, 4 or 5 last game. He's priced up for the occasion though, so it's not like he's $200. Benny Snell's getting 1 to 2 carries a game. It's going to be extremely hard for him to pay off anything like that at $1,000. CJ Ham will see some goal line carries, so if you're trying to get a 1-yard touchdown, that kind of thing, he might pay it off that way, but not somebody that I'm prioritizing. And Anthony McFarland Jr. also not going to make my player pool. I believe he's seen a total of 3 or 4 touches the entire year. Not somebody you want to be investing in with any type of confidence. And moving on to wide receiver, we do have some flyer options at wide receiver I like going to, which we'll get to here in a second. But at the top of things, we have Justin Jefferson at $11,000. He's somebody who's going to be extremely popular. I do think that he gets a massive boost here if Joe Hayden is ruled out for the Steelers. It's important to note that the Steelers have had a ton of injuries on the defensive side of things over the past month or so. Most of them will be back for this game. The only real question mark is Joe Hayden. He will be a game time decision as of right now, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that. If he ends up getting rolled out, Justin Jefferson to the moon. They'll have no one to cover him with his frame, his size, his speed, his route running. In my opinion, Justin Jefferson is the most talented wide receiver in the NFL. I didn't say he's the best wide receiver in the NFL. There's a huge difference between talent and actual skill, and actually implementing and taking advantage of that talent. But in terms of all the skills, he has all of them. He does them with exceptional quality. So I like going to him a lot, particularly if Joe Hayden is out. Even if Hayden is playing, and I'm assuming that he is as of right now, that's where I have all these projections at, would still be one of the best plays on the slate. Deontay Johnson, his counterpart, is also somebody I'll be targeting. Ever since Juju Smith-Schuster has exited the lineup, he's been an elite player in the NFL in terms of his target share, so you'd like to see that. The Steelers have also been prone to throwing the ball shorter, targeting some of those small, shorter routes, over the middle type of routes, so you really got to like that from a fantasy perspective. Adam Thielen, he's kind of the man of the hour here. I do expect him to play. He's dealing with an injury. He was not in the lineup for the majority of last game, exited and then did not return. So as a result, that's slightly concerning. Was not practicing on Monday. So all signs right now are that he's not going to play, but he's an extremely tough player. He has toughed out some injuries in the past. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he's playing. If he doesn't, and again, that's fully reasonable, KJ Osborne would be the next man up. This is an offense that tends to be extremely concentrated. They don't love using a lot of their periphery options. They just don't trust them. And could you blame them, right? When you have the skill position players that the Vikings have, you'd want to have your offense be extremely concentrated. So for me, Adam Thielen, even though he's questionable, I do have him projected as in. The next man up would be KJ Osborne. Whoever plays that number 2 wide receiver role from him, though, it's going to be an absolute smash play. So you can see Osborne, even if Thielen plays, I do like him in this instance. He projects for 9.2 points. But the real kicker with Osborne is you're looking for that home run play upside, that 90-yard touchdown. He's done it time and time again this year, has 4 70-plus yard touchdowns this year. If he does that in Showdown, you'll absolutely have to have him. Another guy I want to get to here is Chase Claypool. He did not practice on Monday. Has been dealing with injuries for pretty much the entire year to this point. I absolutely love him against this weak Vikings team. Their secondary is the worst asset of their team, is by far their weakness. And Chase Claypool, he really gets it done with the deep ball. We haven't seen it much this year. He's definitely been a shell of his former self, the sophomore slump, as they say. And I do expect him to snap out of it at some point. And when he does, he's going to have a massive fantasy day. So I not only like him at the flex position, I also like him at the captain slot. I look for him to rebound in a big time spot here. Let's move on to the bottom of the board. James Washington, with all these guys healthy, he's kind of taken a back seat to somebody like a Ray McLeod, so not really huge on going to him in that instance. McLeod, though, I am playing. He's not only cheaper than a James Washington, he's going to contribute on special teams, perhaps get you that touchdown there. I'm not counting on that, though. What he really does is he gets you some of those third down plays, some of those setup screens. where he can get you 2 or 3 catches during the game, but for 40 or 50 yards. They love setting up plays for McLeod. He's extremely shifty. I mean, he's the returner for God's sake. So they're trying to get the ball in his hands as many times as possible. And while he's not going to take the top off of the defense, he did have that one career game where he got targeted a whole bunch. That was mainly a beneficiary of the fact that everyone was just covering Deontay Johnson. They were not looking McLeod's way at all. That's not going to happen again. Teams are going to adjust for that type of game plan. They know they at least have to cover him. But on some of those short screen type of passes, I definitely think he's a good part of the offense and somebody I want to invest in. D.D. Westbrook and Anthony Miller, they will be active. Westbrook becomes an interesting play if Thielen is out, because then he becomes the number 3 wide receiver, essentially taking over that KJ Osborne role. And the thing with Westbrook is Osborne's not a slot wide receiver. He's somebody who's going to play on the outside. He kind of does it with his speed. Westbrook might play a lot of snaps just based on that alone. They'll need him out there to be that possession type of wide receiver that Thielen typically is. It's not like he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver. He's not going to jump quite that high in terms of target share, but could definitely get a larger role in the offense than people are expecting. And Anthony Miller, he caught his first ball for the Steelers this week. Nothing to really write home about. He might get a catch or 2 in the game. Not really anyone I'm prioritizing. Let's move down to tight end now. Pat Freiermuth at $6,600 and Tyler Conklin at $6,200. You always have to consider the tight ends here in Showdown. Freiermuth, especially even at captain, he's somebody who's getting a ton of red zone usage. In fact, over the last month of the season, nobody in the NFL has a higher red zone target percentage than Pat Freiermuth. When the Steelers get down in the red zone, Ben Roethlisberger is looking for one man and one man only, which makes him extremely attractive in Showdown. Tyler Conklin, also somebody I'm willing to use at flex. While I don't think he has the upside to potentially take home a captain slot, is somebody that we'll be using as a mid-tier type of option. Chris Herndon down at $200. He's my tight end de jour of the week, the one way down the board that's going to score that sneaky touchdown. He's somebody who I expected to be a huge part of this offense going into the year. Has been good for the Jets in the past of all teams, showed some upside for a really crappy offense. So I figured in a high volume offense with Kirk Cousins throwing in the ball, he was going to have a breakout type of year, and it just hasn't materialized to this point. He's played some snaps, he scored a few touchdowns at this point in the year. I look for him to potentially have that big breakout game. Let's move on to the defenses and the kickers. The defenses I'm not huge on. I do expect this game to be higher scoring than the public thinks, so I will not be on the defenses nearly as much as the public is. In terms of the kickers, I'll be on them a little bit higher. Because it's supposed to be a high scoring game, we're going to expect some extra points after touchdowns, and of course field goals as well. So I like going to both those options there. If I had to pick one, probably would be Boswell, just because I'm a homer, I'm a Steeler fan, and also he's the cheaper of the 2 options. That's all I've got for the preview. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you guys have as your favorite captain play. You guys saw some of the favorite options that I had, whether it's Najee Harris and Alexander Madison, Justin Jefferson, or Deontay Johnson. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those plays. But go ahead and let me know who your favorite is down in the comments below. I will remind you guys, we're going to be doing a live stream on Thursday right before the slate locks. It is going to be at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. There we're going to talk about the inactives and actives that come out. We're also going to talk about any implications with my player pool, and of course any live questions that you have down in chat. So if you're playing season-long fantasy and you need to know who to pick up, or if you guys need help with your DFS lineups for Thursday Night Football, make sure to bring those questions on by. Make sure to like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. We're going to have even more NFL content coming throughout the week, whether it's for the main slate or the Showdown slates as well. So make sure to stay tuned for all of that. And good luck with all of your lineups for this Thursday Night Football. And let's get the spread.